Welcome to the Cindy and Joe Show. I'm Joe.
I'm Cindy.
And this is Between the Whistles Detroit. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and follow us on Instagram. Now, while the music's cut out, we have some serious information to divulge to everyone out there. You know, it's been known that Cindy has her sources and I have mine. So Cindy is going to break the news. What is it?
So we are seeing on a lot of the talk boards and a lot of the fan groups out there that people are wondering what is going on with Philip Hronek. And I know that I was curious myself, and Joe, now I think I can shed some light on what is going on with Philip Hronek. And the deal is this. The defenseman is going to have to concede some of his negotiations. It seems that negotiations are a bit of a standstill in a way, a bit of a game of chicken going on with our Detroit Red Wings and our defenseman there. So apparently the word is that he is looking for a Dylan Larkin kind of a deal. He is looking for a long-term 6-year deal, about $5 million a year or a $30 million contract.
Yep.
It may be broken down into a number of ways, and we're not sure of exactly the schematic of that, but it's basically a $30 million deal and a long-term contract with a potential no-move clause. So it seems that our excellent GM, as you know, he is not signing any long-term contracts. They're looking more for a 3-year deal. 2 to 3 years, actually. Steve would prefer a 2-year, but he's willing to go 3, from what we understand. And definitely not $5 million, not a $30 million deal. He's not looking to commit to any more than, say, 8.5. We just don't know how that's all going to break out. $8.5, $9 million is what he's kind of looking at. But I think they're willing to move a little bit more in the upward direction. But the point of the matter is they're just way too far apart.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying right now is so Philip Hronek is looking for a deal that is going to benefit him more than the team. And what he's looking for is a $5 million deal. Now, Danny DeKaiser makes $5 million, but he was paid by Ken Holland.
Right.
And I don't think Steve Yzerman is going to do the same thing with Philip Hronek. You know, the reality of the situation is this. We talked about it before on the show, but if you're like Philip Hronek, right? You came in. If your contract is up this year, you're coming into a really, really awkward situation because the defensive pairings are way better than they've ever been. You know, Nick Leddy on the team is going to be it kind of prolongs your spot. You know, Hronek was not the most. He had a lot of points on a team that wasn't really an offensive juggernaut. So I really don't think that he's worth $5 million a year.
Yeah, no, and I think the management agrees with you. And then just to be clear as well, my source is not Steve Yzerman, just for those of you who are wondering. So when I say Stevie would like to do this or like to do that, that is really coming from a collection of sources who just know him very well and they know how he thinks. So just to be clear on that it is not any. No. It is not Steve Yzerman.
No, it wouldn't be Steve Yzerman.
No.
But the reality of the situation is this: I think you said it when you were talking. He wants a no movement clause.
Yeah. And
that's one of the things that if you're a pro player and you have the opportunity to get a no move clause or no trade clause as it's currently said in multiple facets, but in hockey it's no movement clause. You really want that. But if you're going to get that, you have to be a really, really good player, in my opinion. I mean, as someone who has, studied being in the scouting in NHL and NFL, one of the things that's different from the NFL is there is no trade clauses in that sport. But in hockey, it's run rampant. Now, here's the problem with the NTC and the no movement clauses, okay? If you have a chance to trade a guy, okay, and you're saying – and the better deal is the place that he does not want to go, you can't trade him there. It's a no win situation for the team. Right. So unless this guy who gets a no trade clause is a guy like Connor McDavid or
some sort of marquee player, some kind of a generational talent and something like that.
One of your best players. If one of your best players wants a no trade clause, that's probably a good situation. But like a guy like Philip Hronek getting no trade clause, that's just a recipe for disaster. And I don't think Steve Yzerman will do that.
No.
He showed in Tampa Bay that he did do that somewhat too often. and I think he kind of seen it from Detroit that he kind of made those mistakes. So I don't think he'll make those same mistakes again.
Yeah, I'm sure that he won't. And Steve is just too smart, and he's got his formula for what he believes is going to work. And the reality is that Philip Hronek and his representatives just are not fitting into that at all, and they're not moving much.
And to be honest, they're. If I'm his agent, okay, if I'm his agent, I'm going to the bargaining table and I'm going, okay, this is what I want. Well, if I'm his agent and I'm coming to Steve Yzerman, I know for a fact that when I come to Steve Yzerman, especially this year, he can be like, kick rocks.
Well, yeah, and so
if I would have came to him the year before, smart.
Exactly.
But you didn't come. But you didn't come to him at that time, and you didn't make that. You made a colossal mistake as an agent, thinking that it'd be better next year, when you know for dang sure now that the expansion draft and the expansion rosters have gone away, you don't have to worry about that. You can go get talent. That's what Steve Yzerman was doing when he was protecting against the expansion draft. So I would have definitely if I was an agent, I would have said, you know what, here, I'm going to come at you. I know you're kind of stronghold, but I'm going to come at you and say, okay, this is what I want. This is what we want. And he would probably would have been pigeonholed to do it.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what they're failing to understand, I believe, on his side, is that he's in a different environment now. In addition to the, defensemen that we've picked up, you mentioned Nick Leddy, we also have, and there's a couple of others as well, we also have there's a particular prospect that is down in the minor system for the Wings, and that person was unnamed to me, but it was described to me. And this individual is just kind of a sleeper, right? Nobody really is going to see him coming, but apparently he's just this 2A defenseman. He's got the grit of Joey Kocur, and he's got the potential skill level of a Nick Lindstrom. And again, this player is not named to me, but we have individuals like this in the system that we may see mid-season this season, or for certain on the roster next season. So the thing is that, Philip Hronek now finds himself in a position where he's not as valuable as he was before. He doesn't have quite as much to offer because there's other possibilities there to satisfy the defensive needs of the Detroit Red Wings. So unfortunately, it seems a bit of a timing problem on his side, and as well as, I think, kind of people want pride of authorship, right? They want to say, hey, I brought the deal that got done. And I think that they're going to need to make some concessions. And if we want to hold on to Philip Hronek, and I think he certainly has value, I know that, Darren McCarty has mentioned to me he really likes his style of play. He thinks he's got great possibility, and that's it, is that Philip Hronek has some great potential, but the fact is that he's up against competition that he did not have before in a different environment that was not the same, and they're going to take that into consideration if they're going to make a deal.
Also, people are wondering what that prospect probably is. If you had to venture a guess, you'd probably go Jared McIsaac. Because Jared McIsaac he was a captain of Team Canada. You don't really get that from anybody. If you're one of the captains of that Team Canada, that's pretty high honor. So it means that you play a really, really good game. Even if you're assistant captain, it means it's a high honor to represent a nation like Canada or the United States or Russia or Sweden, any of those nations that have great hockey pedigree. But for me, I'm not signing Philip Hronek to a $5 million contract. There's no way you can do that. I mean, look at the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is Nick Leddy is going to come in. Did you know that Nick Leddy, being in New York, he comes in as a top point getter on the defensive pairings? Yeah,
and you can't ignore that. And Philip Hronek is not that.
That's what Nick Leddy is. We were hoping that Philip Hronek would be.
And I think Nick Leddy is a great mentor for Philip Hronek. I think those two on this team for a couple of years would be great.
I think Mark Stahl is a good person for Philip Hronek.
Oh, sure.
I think Nick Leddy is. Yeah. But here's the reality of the situation. If you're Philip Hronek, you got Steve Lindstrom at your heels. You have guys like Moritz Seider coming up.
Right.
McIsaac. You have the kid from Sweden, forget his name, Oliver or something. He's a defenseman. He's a big defenseman. I mean, the reality of the situation is you aren't in a position to do this because the reality of the situation... Wallander. Thank you. I was going to say Wallstrom or something like that. But Wallander.
Yeah.
And you're not in a position to do this because the Red Wings were ranked 9th in the prospect rankings, okay? So they have talent through that system. So you better just recognize where you're at and just take a bridge contract. If you really think you're a $5 million player, here's what you need to do. If I'm the agent, I'm going, okay, I'll go 2 years, $3 million apiece.
Yeah, and I think that that's reasonable, and I think that's much more along the lines of what Steve Yzerman is thinking about. And especially at the end of the day, everybody wants to win a Stanley Cup, and I think that you definitely have the makings of a Stanley Cup contender here with what Steve is doing with the Detroit Red Wings. It just might take a couple of years. So yeah, take a bridge contract, stay around long enough to stick around with the contender, prove yourself, earn a spot on that Stanley Cup contending team, and then make your deal. Yeah. So I don't understand the approach. What I don't understand, Joe, not necessarily the approach. I think it might have been the right approach at a different time. What I don't understand is the reluctance to negotiate reasonably. That's what I don't understand.
Well, agents always try to go high, and they usually don't.
The value of good representation, right?
Yeah, I mean, but the reality of the situation is you got to recognize where you're at.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, the question that I'd ask the people is, would you sign Phil Hronek to a $5 million contract for, let's say, 6 years?
Yeah.
I don't think that you would. But if you would,
leave
it in the comments. We'll respond to you accordingly. If you don't, comment and say why you don't want that to happen. Great. Look forward to reading them, and Joe and I will respond. And we will see you in the next time as we're talking about an article that has Larkin getting traded, and it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. But Cindy wants to debate this. Yes. And she's gonna get burned again. We'll see. This is Between the Whistles with Joe and Cindy.